Welcome to the Young Saints Leadership Podcast, where we're going to be talking about all things youth, from leadership culture to supernatural youth ministry and discipling revivalists. We hope you guys enjoy.
Hello. Welcome back.
What's up?
We are doing a continuation
Yes.
today. But
Ooh.
first, can we just talk about what we've been doing this month?
Oh,
It
yes.
is the love month.
The love month.
February.
What does that mean? It's Valentine's Day. That's all that means.
Yes.
Today is not Valentine's Day, but you know, it's near.
It's near.
So we have started dating series. Dun, 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 dun. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, are you going to talk about sex? What is that even going to look like? Don't say too much because there's junior hires.
It's true.
But it's true.
Yeah.
But
Parents
it's true.
actually get very scared of relationship month. Which
I
I'm
know,
like,
and
you
we don't
have to
even.
worry.
I know we don't even talk about stuff that's exposing.
I promise
Yeah.
they see worse on TikTok than they'll get in our
That's
youth group.
True.
This isn't exposure therapy.
It's true. Oh my gosh. But I get it. I mean, I'm going to be that parent. I'm going to be like, what you telling my kid?
It's true.
Yes.
I will.
Yes.
So I totally understand it. But yeah,
This
dating talk was fun.
Couple funny things on this. First of all, if you don't talk about dating in your youth group, you might want to consider it. Because even if you don't agree with it, like, do I really think two 12-year-olds should date? No, there's not really much point, right? But I asked our youth group the other day when we were having a dating talk, that I'm like, how many if I told you you shouldn't date, you still would? And I would say 75% of the room
Majority.
still raise their hand.
People raised their
So-
hand that also told us their parents said they couldn't date.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait, what happened? Your
Yes.
parents said you can't date, but you're telling us you will
Yes.
anyways.
But it's because, like, and
Okay.
that's where I think the church dating culture got a little off, is we say, don't do it. You got to wait until you're married to date, you know, like
or
that's
ready,
what everyone's
or
saying.
ready to be married.
And I've heard so much, don't date until you're married, because
Yeah.
we're just so afraid of the topic.
Yeah.
But if you give people basic tools and you shape their view of dating
Yeah.
Changes
versus
the game.
letting the world do it because we're saying no, so they find it somewhere else, if we can reshape their view of dating, maybe we'd have a few healthier, less baggage
Yep.
relationships.
And removing the shame around
Yes.
dating. I think that's why a lot of people have avoided it, because of the shame.
Oh, absolutely. It,
Totally.
it feels shameful to say you're dating, which is weird.
Yes.
Because I'm like, it's learning how to have a healthy relationship that would set you up for a lifelong relationship is
You would
so
think,
weird that
yeah.
that's where we place shame sometimes
Yeah.
and fear, only because I think it's a reaction because people have done it poorly.
Yes.
Totally.
People have made messes, and you're like, man, there's so many
I try to
different
remove the
ways.
shame of anyone that's dating. I'm like, oh, look at you cuties. You guys are so cute.
Yeah.
You like each other.
We're the youth pastors that actually think like, hey,
Honestly,
if,
if
you're
the
gonna do it
parents
well,
don't want you to date, that's
don't
between
date.
you and the parents. I'm not
Yeah.
going to tell you no. I'll have my thoughts and help you figure it out.
oh yeah, and we
But
always say
I think
follow
you
the
should
parent
submit to
first.
your parents.
Submit.
So if they say no, it's no.
My parents
Yeah.
did not let me date until they said no dating till after you're married, which I was always like, I don't understand how to get married then if I don't date. And then I moved out of the house, and then I started dating because then I was under a different roof. But I was 19 when I moved
It's
out,
true.
so I didn't date all the way up.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so think about
Look at
dating.
this.
If you don't know where to start,
Pull
maybe
it back in. Anyways,
reach
part
out.
2, continuation.
Anyway, we're going to talk on making disciples.
Making disciples.
Ooh,
Maybe
love
we should do a
this.
podcast on dating for
One
y'all.
day,
Maybe one
that'll be
day.
fun.
Here you go. But today it's part 2 of discipleship.
Yep.
So buckle up. We're going to talk about how we have walked through people making disciples. We personally do it. Obviously, we talked about last time, be discipled. That's the number one goal.
Yes.
So that
Mhm.
you're not just discipling people without being discipled.
Yes.
Yep. But now, how do you make disciples?
How do you make disciples?
And I want to start with a story. There was a young man that I met, when we first moved out here. And this relationship taught me so much about discipleship because it was getting into his space. Because sometimes, discipleship, you're almost looking for somebody that's hungry, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. They're like, where's the hungry people? Because I want to disciple them,
Which is true.
which is great. But there's also this other side to it. This kid was just got out of rehab, which is always fun when you meet a kid that, is 14 and they just got out of drug rehab and
I thought he was
alcohol
at
rehab.
least like 15.
Maybe been 15, but I think it was 14.
Oh, wow.
And so meet with him, doesn't want to meet with me, doesn't hardly talk the first conversation we have, which is always amazing. And
we have all had those
yes,
moments.
and
How
I'm
are
just
you?
talking. I'm at this, really good Mexican restaurant, so at least I was eating good food as
That's
I'm
nice.
just trying to keep the conversation going, which is super awkward when you're taking bites and then it's silence. And then you keep talking and you're like, wow, you're not giving me anything. And it led to this, me having to really lean in and go, can I believe in this kid? Man, God, can I believe in him? And I think the start of discipleship was realizing to get a proper lens that God has belief in every human, that he actually sees the full potential of a human
Yeah.
and he knows what he created. And if I'm going to ever disciple people, I have to start there because this person challenged that in me. Because I was like, I see a bunch of attitude. I'm very frustrated. I see me wasting my time.
Yeah.
All of these things is what I
True.
see. And I actually never want to have this meeting again. Fast forward, I chose not to go that path because I was feeling challenged by God to go, can I see people from his perspective with his purpose in mind? And led me to where we started meeting weekly, me and this kid, and he went from drug rehab, this was like his second or third time coming out of it, so like rough scenario, to almost dropping out of school, to then finally getting radical breakthrough, full vulnerability, walking in freedom, graduating with A's and B's, which had never happened
Wow.
before. His parents actually thought I was tutoring him. They didn't know I was discipling him. And they asked me, they said, what are you doing? Like our son's finally getting A's and B's. He's never been able to.
It's amazing.
And I said, they're like, what are you teaching him? And I said, I'm talking about his life. And they're like, what? And I said, we just talk about like what's going on in his own emotions and life and how to bring Jesus in. And that's how much it radically impacted him. He's married now, doing great.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy, started from that perspective of, can I see potential and purpose in somebody that right now in the natural, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You know what's crazy? Jesus took him 3 years.
Yes. No, bro, seriously.
That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
and
We think
It's
discipleship's
time.
like, oh, I can do this for a month and they're going to be great.
10-week program. If you
Yeah.
learn these 10 basic fundamental truths that we
Right.
call theology, that's it. You're going to be a disciple of Jesus for life.
Yes.
And it's not.
It's not.
and the New Testament is just some of the highlights. It's not the day in and
Yep.
day out life on life with his disciples.
Yep.
You know what's
Yeah.
interesting, especially with youth ministry? I heard someone say this. It was Banning Leapshire. We quote him a lot, actually.
Because
around
we
here.
love banning.
But he said something like, when I look back at my youth ministry days, I don't remember how many kids came. I don't remember if the room was full or what I spoke on or if the worship set was good. You know what I remember from my youth group days is, maybe I'm butchering this, but like it was something along the lines of, I remember the people that did life with me and where they're at. And that's what brings me either joy or sadness. If
Yep.
I see someone that's still walking with God because they did life with me, or if I
Yep.
see someone that turned away
Yeah.
and made bad decisions. Those are what determine my joy of success or sadness in my life, like the fruit of my life. And he said, even though like some kids that he had maybe made bad decisions, he still loves connecting with them, still kind of chats and reaches out to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm like, I think sometimes we can make it such a big deal of big crowds. What is going on? Are we doing our job? Is the worship set perfect? Or did we do a great transition? And I'm like,
Yes.
honestly, in 10 years,
It's about
are the kids
people.
we impacted still burning for God?
Yes.
Are they becoming good moms and dads?
Yeah.
Do they love their career and feel like they're living a life they love and are proud of? Like,
It's the statement, healthy people create healthy families that actually create healthy communities, that create healthy cities, that create healthy nations.
Yes.
I think what we don't realize is as youth pastors, we are the starting place. Youth and children's a lot of times get that formidable years alongside with parents to form healthy people.
Yes.
Like that's so important, and we minimize that a lot of times in the church. We're going after events and services and lights, and we're so aware of like stuff on a Wednesday night, and I'm like,
stuff that will not matter.
will not matter. I'm like, is that kid gonna actually make it when the time comes and when they're stressed or when they're feeling pressure? Is there someone in their life they can call to say, what do you think about this?
Yes. Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
questioning God, when they're questioning an outcome.
When they're questioning getting a divorce in the future.
Yes.
Like, who do they have?
Is there
Yep.
someone, and it's been shocking, like even the impact you make as a person on somebody else, even if you miss that person for 5 or 6 years, it's crazy how they will come back to people
100%.
that they feel believed in. They feel see them, how like appropriately, how God sees them, belief in them. Even if they've been disconnected 5 or 6 years, they'll come back to that person to go, hey, my life's in shambles. And I
Yes.
just remember when I connected with you, something was happening.
Yes.
Something was different
Yeah.
about my life.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing that Bannon even said, that you can actually measure
Yeah.
what
No.
the things that you're pouring into a student right now. Like, you'll see it in 10 years.
Totally.
Yes.
5, 10, 20 years.
I think it's the joy of even us, like me and my wife, we've been here for, since 2010. So when you've been here for
Long
2010,
time.
we're in 2022. I'm like, oh
Long
my
time.
gosh, we have seen a lot of graduating classes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And it's fun to me when I meet students right now in our
Yes.
city or that come back to visit that are actually doing well. And they'll say, Rory, do you remember me? And I'm like, not at all. This happened the other day. They're like, I was in Young Saints. I was like, you were? Oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm thinking, gosh, dang it, whatever,
Yeah.
But then hearing the impact or something that's happened, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, you're actually doing well. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think nothing brings me more joy or even like a feeling of love and like proud is when I look at people that I'm connected with and I feel like I had a part of a significant shift in their story, watching them succeed,
Yes.
Yeah.
watching them like grow up and find someone they love and get
Yeah.
married. And
Yeah.
I was a small part of that. And
Yeah.
like feeling that like, wow, like I'm so proud. Like I feel so much joy when I think of people that I know I've impacted live the life they've dreamed.
Yes.
Yep. Oh,
Yes.
it does.
You know what I mean?
And I want to hit on something, though, that kind of gets a little squirrely in discipleship. I think right now in our day and age is sometimes you can think discipleship is I'm just trying to connect and listen.
Yeah.
And I think the power of discipleship is that I'm not just connecting and listening, but I actually have a goal
Yes.
that I want to actually form Jesus in you, however that looks.
Yes.
That actually, when I'm in a disciple, like if I'm discipling a kid, I'm not just going, I want to be your buddy. I'm not just hanging out. I'm not just like, man, can I just hit your game so you
Right.
feel seen? But I'm
Yes.
going, I want to create in you a new way to view life
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
through the lens of how Jesus did life.
Paul said, I labor
Labor.
as a
Oh.
mother in childbirth
We
to see
understand
Christ
that.
formed
Yes.
within you.
It's that.
Good
and Paul was
Lord.
discipling the churches.
It's a big deal.
It's a big
It is.
deal.
And I think so. There's been this idea right now in our culture where almost some of that, man, we're just trying to hear, we're just trying to listen, we're just trying to be, has integrated into discipleship where I'm like, Jesus was very proactive at shaping the view
Yes.
of the disciples.
Yeah.
Any interaction, but what he did was he would wait till an interaction happened and then he would help shape the view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't like try to prevent stuff. See, that's where discipleship gets very controlling.
Yeah.
So if you try to control and prevent and speak before somebody does something to help them avoid it, it can get a little off.
Yeah.
It feels controlling. Jesus didn't do that. He didn't say, hey, I know you're about to say something because I'm God, so don't say that, and I'm going to correct you. He would
Right.
let the disciples do it, and then he'd say, hey, you don't know what spirit you're of. Hey, let me teach you now a new way to think or a new way to go about life or a new
Yeah.
way to live.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's important in this conversation of how do you make disciples is, man, I'm intentionally trying to form Jesus, which is why I need to make sure he's being formed in me.
Yeah.
Like that I'm having proper beliefs
It's
and
true.
views and
Yeah.
thoughts so that I'm reproducing a follower of Jesus,
Yeah.
not just reproducing a connected person.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
good.
people
Yeah.
start in discipleship listening and just maybe going to a game. You're building that trust.
Oh, totally.
And that's a great place to start. But I love what we've been talking about is discipleship also is about like teaching them to remember who they are and what God has said over them. And like there was this one person that I was in youth service one time and I felt like the Lord just reminded me of a word that they received at an event that we did. And I was like, I need to go remind them. And so I went and I reminded him, I'm just reminded of that word that you got of you are anointed and you are called and you were chosen. And in that moment, I felt like the Lord say, she's one of yours to pull in. And I was like, this is discipleship. I'm literally here to be your biggest champion and remind you who God is making you to be. And I'm fanning the flame inside of you.
Yes.
That's the goal of discipleship.
It's so true.
And even Leslie, how many of you guys, all of us have probably done this. Like you go to the person that's your mentor discipling you and you're like, I know if I take it to them now, they're going to maybe I only think this way because Leslie's an 8 on the Enneagram and she challenges everything.
I love
Oh,
it.
Lord help me. And so I'm like, I wasn't going to her for affirmation or just to be heard.
Yeah.
I knew when I went to her, she was going to help me change the way I think and help shape me.
challenge,
And
yes.
really, like, I'm going to her and she's going to help me overcome this.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm not just going to be validated and stay where I am,
Yeah.
which validation is important. And she would do that, but she never let me stay.
Oh, it's the
Where I
Psalms.
was.
It's Psalms. So many people, if you do the journey of Psalms, David starts praising God, remembering who he is. Then he gets to the deep place, but he always ends up back praising God.
It's true.
If you disciple somebody and they start with encouragement and who God is, but you leave them in victim, like you lead them in powerlessness, like they've shared, and you just validate pain, but you don't actually help them with the next step, even if the next step is just across the ravine. You're not going up the mountain yet, but you're like, oh, we were on this side of the river and we crossed. We made progress to actually overcoming something. It's important.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's a big deal because sometimes people get, I know, like you felt the tension to go, oh, I don't know if I want to say this right now because
Yes. Yeah.
I hear you, I feel you, but man, there's actually a different way to see this.
Yeah.
And I want to speak to maybe some of the younger leaders who may have been in a season where they're being discipled and they're just stepping into the place where they're discipling.
Totally.
Sometimes that switch can be a little hard because you're like,
Yep.
man, I'm used to being the one to be poured into.
Yeah.
And now I have to make the switch where I'm not just thinking about me.
That's so
Yep.
Like
true.
I'm actually thinking about forming Christ intentionally in others. And I think sometimes crossing that cool factor where that kid looks at you and they think that you're the man or they think that you're the most beautiful person.
Yep.
And they're like, I want to be like you. And then you see them go off in a way and you actually have that moment where, oh man, I actually have to challenge them. Like I actually have to speak into something that they might not agree with.
Totally.
I just want to encourage you, like that's a moment for you to take courage and know that when you challenge and when you actually call them higher, it's not going to break relationship. I think there's a fear that if we challenge or if we correct or if we are bringing our input that is different from how they're seeing the world, we have this fear that, oh man, maybe I'll break connection or I won't have that same level of influence.
Yep.
And that's just not true. It's not true.
It's not true. And I love that
true.
because that's discipleship.
Yes.
Is you actually realizing and remembering your role, that you're going, I am here for this purpose so that you actually become all that God created you to be, that there is no barrier. There's nothing that gets in your way, no lie or unbelief or something that holds you back from who God has called you to be. Yeah. And if that means I have to step in when you're running the opposite direction and pull you back and say, whoa, I will remind you who you are.
Yeah.
Like you have to actually decide to leave me.
Yes.
Because I believe in you that much. It's where the power of belief in discipleship is huge.
Yes.
It's not the power of naivety. It's not being naive about what's happening or ignorant. It's the power of belief to say, I believe in you because I believe in who God has said about you. I remember a leader telling me, don't have any leader on your team that you don't know why they're there. Mm-hmm. Do not let somebody serve you that you do not fully know what God is already speaking over them and you believe in them. And he goes, otherwise it's all about you as a leader. And you're just hoping people serve your vision. And he goes, you got to switch it to become discipleship.
Totally.
Why are they in my life? I believe in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like you said, you aren't their friend.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy for us to want to stay in the friend zone of like, I want you to just think I'm cool.
Yeah.
But if you want to make disciples, sometimes you have to say hard things and call them back like you guys were talking about. But I think the most powerful way we can disciple people is life on life.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? You just bring them along.
You bring them into
Whatever
every
you're
area.
doing. One of our youth leaders whenever she has an oil change, she schedules a time with the students. Like, come get an oil change with me. And I love
it.
that.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Of like, I'll go walk around Target with people, or we'll
Yeah.
go. Yesterday I went on a drive with someone.
I've started going on walks,
Yep.
and I invite like literally all of my little disciples. I bring
Yes,
them
I
on walks
love
with
it.
me now.
It's so
and
good.
It's the best.
Yep.
And so
Yes.
much comes out. I have a spot where we go walking, and then there's this same seat. It's so funny because I've sat in that chair so many times now in the past like 2 weeks.
People already
And
know.
so-
They just
Yeah.
kind of sit there and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the
Yeah.
time we're about to get vulnerable. It's
love it.
crazy. The life on life, making it
Yeah.
attainable. I think sometimes people think that discipleship is so scary or
Yes.
hard or like, oh my God, I got to
don't have
figure out
enough
all
time.
these meetings for coffee. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not coffee.
Yes.
It's life on life.
So good.
Bring them grocery shopping. If you have to run bills, put them in the car with you and talk while you're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have a game night, you'd be surprised what comes out,
Oh, man.
even in the midst of fun.
Even in the midst of fun.
But honestly, that's if we could leave you with anything, just do life on life. It's so beneficial. It's fun. It's low stakes. You're not trying to make it fit into your life. You're just like, this is my life, and come join it.
And remember the goal. You are forming
You're forming
Christ
Christ in a
within.
person.
Yes.
This is the goal of discipleship.
So important.
Yeah.
But
So
we love you
good.
guys. We're going to end, and we will see you next, or you'll hear us next time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Bye.